next episode is brought to you by My Feet Are Off the Ground, A Journey from Tragedy to Triumph, the autobiography written by our next guest, gun safety advocate and author, Jeffery Williams. You thought part one of his interview was something. Stay tuned.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Previously on Generation Motivation, the podcast.
Telling my brother, calm down, don't worry about it, the gun not real. So then my friend was like, nah, it's real. And I said, let me see it. So he let me hold the gun, and I looked at it, I could feel the weight on it, and I realized that it was real. So, I just hold the gun for a minute, but it just made me feel like some superhero, like, a gangster figure or something, like, wow, I have a gun in my head. And then I heard this loud bang. So I grabbed my head because he was standing a couple of feet away from me. I was sitting on the couch, and I remember seeing the barrel of that gun light up, and that light came instantly, and I heard this loud noise. So I grabbed my head, and when I grabbed my head, the bullet ended up hitting me under my arm. So because he was standing up, the bullet went down on an angle, and because the bullet was so hot, it melted my skin back closed, so I wasn't bleeding anywhere. So when I looked, I felt weird, so I started feeling numb, and I started hitting my legs. It's almost like when you lay on your hand and it goes to sleep. I started hitting both of my legs, trying to figure why is my legs feeling numb? And so I remember telling him, you shot me.
Featured in the New York Times, CNN, ABC, various podcasts, other media outlets. My next guest is one remarkable individual, shot at the age of 13 and paralyzed ever since. And it's not slowed him down one bit. If anything, it's made him that much stronger. Stay tuned. First off, Jeff, I want to thank you for sharing the story, because I know, every time that you share the story, it's like you have to relive it. So I appreciate you, sharing that story in hopes that it's going to impact someone else. So that in itself takes a lot of courage to be able to share that story. Like I said, that's the first half of this story. You have done so much in the 41 years that you've been in a wheelchair is just remarkable. That's why I wanted people to really understand and grasp what you went through at that time as a child, to actually see the bullet come out of the gun, from the light from the gun, to feeling it, to experiencing it, to being in the hospital, all that time, the range of emotions that you went through, like you said, you were in denial at some point. And I'm going to say denial is, you had hope, obviously, that, once the bullet is taken out, you're going to go back to your normal life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why would you not? You know what I'm saying? Just like it went in, it went out. Or you could take it out and resume everything that you were doing prior to that. There was one segment I remember from the prior interview when you said that someone that was actually in the hospital, a little girl, came up to you as you were kind of feeling down and feeling sorry for yourself. She came up and what did this little girl say to you?
This little girl, her name was Melissa. And during that period where I cried for those 30 days, she rolled in the room. She was 7 years old, and she asked me, Jeff, why are you crying? And I said, I couldn't walk. And she smiled at me and sung this song, Ebony and Ivory. And she said, Jeff, when she finished singing the song, she left the room, and on her way out the room, she looked back and said, Jeff, stop crying. When you think you have it bad, somebody else have it worse. And I just thought about what she said. So that morning I went to have another operation done. And when I came out of the recovery room, it was a guy in a stretcher next to me. And he was sitting up in a bed and I was laying there. I had just came out the operation. So tears was running out they was like dried on my eyes. And I looked at him and he's like, "Why you crying?" And it was so weird because I'm like, why is the little girl asked me why I'm crying? Now he asking me why I'm crying. And nobody seemed to care that I was crying because I couldn't walk, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking to myself, I'm coming up, a couple of months ago, I was running around playing basketball and living a regular life. So I'm trying to figure out why they don't understand this. So I said to him, I got a little annoyed at that point, and I'm like, because I can't walk. And he's like, "Can you see your legs?" And I looked at him and I'm like, thinking to myself, like, what difference do it make if I can't move them?
Right.
He snatched the sheet off of himself and he said, "My legs got cut off." And I looked and I'm like, wow. And it just changed my life completely, between the little girl telling me, and all I could think about was what the little girl said to me earlier that morning. And I said to myself, I repeated what she said to myself: when you think you have it bad, somebody else have it worse. And between those two situations, it just it changed my mind to like in ways that I couldn't even imagine. Like it was almost like something just came inside of me. Like, you really are fortunate. You really got to be thankful for what you have left. And I think all of those months prior to that, I was worried about what I lost. I was thinking about me, and all the things that I couldn't do. I wasn't looking at what I had left and using those resources to figure out how can I move forward.
Right.
And I think at that moment I stopped saying what I can't do, and I started saying how can I do.
Right.
And when I went back to my room that night, and I stopped crying that night, because at that point I was crying when I went back to the room, and I woke up. I was sitting in the bed and I thought to myself, why are you still crying? Like, nothing's really changing with these tears.
Yeah.
And I started realizing all of these kids, the little girl is smiling, he's smiling, they both went on with their life. They both moved on. And then I remember it was so many, like a baby fell out the window in the room next to me. So the hospital, I see everybody running, and then, so many kids was dying. I was on a pediatric ward, and I probably witnessed 5 or 6 kids passed away while I was there.
Yeah.
And I remember that morning, the little girl, every morning she would come in there and sing that song and tell me, I'm gonna be all right. And, when you think you have it bad, somebody has it worse. So that next, maybe about 2 weeks later, one morning she didn't come in the room, and I'm looking for her. And so when my nurse came, I asked my nurse to go get her.
Yeah.
And my nurse looked at me like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, did she go home? Like, where is she?
Yeah.
And my nurse said she had to go to surgery and she didn't make it. She had brain cancer, so she died. And I had gotten really close to the little girl, but it was like when she passed away, I felt like I had to live on in her memory of when you have it bad, somebody else has it worse.
Yes.
And from that day on, I just stopped crying. I just stopped feeling sorry for myself. And, I just worked with my mother and just continued to progress. And every day things just got a little better. So the doctor finally came in 9 months later and told me, after I went to rehab and stuff like that, I think I was in the hospital in Lincoln for 6 months. I ended up going to NYU to rehab for 3 months. And they kind of prepped me to go home. And I remember like they would let me go home on a weekend. So I came home one weekend, and I remember like all these months, like I just want to go home.
Right.
And when I got home that night, I went in my room and I was getting ready for bed, and my mother was telling me, get ready to go take a bath and stuff like that. So I got in the bed, took my clothes off because I had to lay on the bed and pull my clothes off sideways and roll from each side.
Yeah.
Everything I did now was different.
Yes.
And I got in my chair and rolled to the bathroom door. And when I got to the door, I realized the chair wouldn't fit through the bathroom door.
Mm.
So I came back in my room, sat on a bed, and sat on the floor and slid, put the towel on the floor and slid to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I remember lifting up on the toilet and the sink. I mean, this tub and the toilet. I was holding both of them. I lift myself up in the tub and I cut the water on. And as the water ran, tears started running out my eyes again. And I just started crying because I'm thinking to myself, like, I wanted to be home so bad. I had no idea that my house wasn't accessible. You
Right.
know, the chair don't fit. I'm sliding on the floor. Like just being reduced to this, it just kind of broke me. Like again, I felt like, wow, this is my new life, you know. So I stopped crying and just pulled myself together because that quote came back in my head, Jeff, when you think you got it bad, somebody else has it worse. I ended up climbing back out the tub, sliding on the floor, getting back in the room. I got dressed, put my pajamas and stuff on. And I remember my mother came to the room and she smiled at me and said, "See, you could do it."
Yeah.
And, it made me feel good because I had accomplished something on my own,
Right.
for so long. And from that point on, I ended up going back to school, and a couple of my teachers would come to the hospital and teach me my lesson. So I remember I graduated with my class, my 8th grade class. So when I graduated, they gave me an award, like an achievement award, for not giving up.
Yeah.
And I still have that award. It was like a little medal, but it had so much meaning to it.
Right.
And, rolling up, getting my diploma, it just meant so much to me, seeing my classmates, seeing all the people that supported me, believed in me. But I think what touched me the most is picking up that diploma and looking at my mother, knowing what we've been through
Yeah.
and the fact that I'm here now.
That you hear now.
And then I went on to graduate. I ended up going to Cardinal Hayes High School. And then a couple of my friends started coming to the house in the morning. They would push me to school.
Yeah.
And, one of my friends, Lamont, they was going to a party one night after school. And I was so happy I was able to wear my clothes again. I was dressing again. I had the latest little outfits.
Yeah.
And, they took me to a party. And at first I didn't want to go because I was in a wheelchair and I felt a little uncomfortable. But then when I got to the party, girls still talked to me. Everybody was treating me normal. Like they started treating me like I was a celebrity. So I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, everybody was excited. Like, I heard you got shot, and they went in, no filter, like,
Right. Right.
like I did something great. Like, you got shot.
Right.
It's noble that you took the bullet. So,
Right.
they wanted to know like what it felt like to get shot. And, I went into the story and they were so excited about it. And I remember coming home that night and I'm telling my mother, like, I went to a party, I had fun. And from that day on, I left Cardinal Hayes. I graduated from there. I went to John Jay College. I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. And I remember graduating from John Jay College. Then I graduated from Adelphi University. And then I landed a job at Colgate-Palmolive. I've been there 27 years now.
Wow.
I started in a mailroom there. And I remember I got promoted to their legal department. And it just, all these things, like being the only person at my job in a wheelchair, being a part of like diversity and inclusion,
Yes.
just breaking these doors down, breaking these barriers down. And even like for my job, everywhere I go, it's like, it just so, meaningful to me that the fact that my job believed in me, like I take trips with my job where they trust me enough to send me on trips.
Yeah.
Where I go do business trips and things that I thought I would never get to do. I started doing, I got my driver's license. I started driving. Then I remember I went water skiing and they had this special ski that it's like a chair strapped to two skis.
Yeah.
And I still have to hold a rope and they pull me with the boat. And while I was on that ski, it was like so many other people in, that had disabilities. We out there water skiing. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, I got family members that's walking, I got friends that's walking and has never done this.
Never done it.
Then I went and I flew a glider airplane. And I'm thinking to myself, like I'm maybe 5,000 feet up in the air flying this plane. And I'm looking down at the ground and I'm looking up at God. And I'm just thinking to myself, when you don't give up, it's amazing how much you can accomplish.
Hey, I wanted to backtrack as well, because there is one important segment of the story that we have not touched upon. And that segment is you forgave your friend.
Yes, let's talk about that.
I definitely want to circle back around because we talked about it off camera.
Right.
And, the fact that so much was taken away from you, but yet so much life was given to you because of that incident, and the fact that you were able to find it in your heart to forgive your friend. I mean, and we talked about how there are people that just, can't forgive for the slightest thing, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Tell me about that moment when you decided to, I mean, I know y'all came up with the story together about what happened because you didn't want to snitch and this and that, but at what point did you really truly forgive him? And how did that conversation, or did you have a conversation with him about forgiveness, or how did that take place?
What was interesting, like my friend would come to the hospital and see me every day. And, he always wanted to make sure I was okay. And I remember, my aunt telling me when it first happened, and she's like, I guess she didn't know how I felt about the whole situation. And like, am I going to want the family to get revenge? Like, how you feeling about this? And she just simply said to me, Jeff, no matter what happens, you're still going to be in this wheelchair. Yeah. So you got to forgive your friend. And I hadn't really thought about the forgiveness part. He would come every day. He would tell me he was sorry. And, I saw he sincerely was sorry. And I just said to him one day, after a couple of months of, I'm sorry. And I just said, it's all right. I forgive you, and he said, like, we never talked about the shooting anymore. Me and him never talked about this until I actually did the New York Times story.
Okay.
And this was 40 years later. I did that story maybe 3 years ago.
Yes.
That's the first time me and him ever talked about that shooting. It would be strange because he was my friend in the sense where some people like, yeah, he forgave him. That's his friend, but he probably don't want to be around him. I literally was with him almost every day.
Yeah.
He would come get me. He would take me out. We would go to great adventures, things like that. And we still had a lot of fun together. And what really touched me a lot is the fact that not only did I forgive him, but my mother, my brother, my whole family forgave him. My mother actually treats him like that's her son. And he's at our Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners, things like that. I go visit him, I go to his house, he stay at my house. Yeah. And like, we such close friends that it's been times he's been with me and we may be somewhere and I meet somebody and they ask, what happened to you? And it got so uncomfortable for both of us that I started just saying I was in an accident.
Yeah.
And I would leave it there because every time I would tell somebody, somebody shot me, I say one of my friends shot me, I wouldn't identify who it was.
Right.
And their response was, I know you killed the person that left you in that situation. Mm-hmm. I know you did this. I know you did that. I know you hate them. It was so negative. Yeah. And to have him sitting through that conversation, and them not knowing, they're literally talking about him. So, me and him dealt with it in that way where we let them say what they felt. And I would always say to the person in front of him,
Yeah.
I say, "You right. So let me ask you a question. Would you rather be me or the person that shot me?"
Mm.
And then they really couldn't answer that question because I asked them, if you shot your best friend, would you want them to forgive you?
Yeah.
Because initially being the victim, everybody says they want revenge, they want to do this. And I even when I spoke at a school one time and I had some high school students and you know, in the inner city where everybody wants to play this gangster role. And one of the kids said, you know, Jeff, no disrespect, but I think, you know, I would have killed my friend. So I said, you know what? When I leave today, I'm gonna go kill my friend. You all right with that? And
Right.
then they was like, nah, don't do that.
Yeah.
I said, if I would have did that, where would I have been now? I wouldn't even be here telling this story to help change your life. And
Right.
the whole thing with all this gun violence in these schools, I think is so important that we, you know, learn dispute resolutions. And you have to forgive to prevent some of the violence that's going on. Because if everybody take things in their own hands and retaliate,
Yeah.
you know, where's the world going to really end up? You know, and my friend ended up becoming an electrician at Columbia, you know, and he's doing really well. You know, he retired. You know, I have a good job. I'm doing well. My brother, you know, he's doing well. So I
Yeah.
think all three of us had some trauma behind the situation in different ways. And I think living with the fact that you shot your friend, it carries its own burden, it carries its own weight. So I feel like we all walked away with a burden. We all walked away with something that was heavy. It was a heavy load.
Yeah.
And by me forgiving him and him accepting the forgiveness, we all took those loads off our back. And I don't think that I could be successful if I kept carrying that burden.
Okay.
So I think forgiveness is not so much you letting somebody get away with something, but
Right.
it's opening your mindset, you know, to let you move on and become who you need to be instead of focusing on what somebody did to you.
So let me ask you this: as a kid, were you always, fearless? I mean, I know,
Yes,
in your okay. I was gonna say
definitely.
in your latter life, I can see where you've done a lot of things that you probably would have never even thought about doing. But
Right.
so you always had the mentality like, you know what, I'm invincible. I can do whatever. If someone else can do it, I can do it. That was your mentality.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
I think going through that transition, being disabled, and the stigma that comes with disabilities is people really believe you can't do so much
Right.
that I I wanted to be that spokesperson for everybody that's disabled. I wanted to be that role model. I wanted to be that person that I'm gonna show y'all so much that a disabled person can do that y'all gonna have more respect when you see anybody that's disabled.
And to piggyback off of that, not only is a motivational speaker and author, as you can see in the background, the name of the book is My Feet Are Off the Ground, A Journey from Tragedy to Triumph. Yep. So definitely make sure that you support that as well. Because obviously he's telling the story now, but it's so much more to the story. You know, when you say you want to be that spokesperson, you took it to heart. You took it to heart by coming out with your own clothing line, coming out
Yes,
with the shoes, Jay Lorenzo. I mean, it's a
yes.
unique story about how that logo came about for the clothing line. So share a little bit about the clothing line.
So the clothing line came out as Jay Lorenzo, and the J is for the Jeff in my first name, and Lorenzo is my middle name. And because the shoes are handmade in Italy, I like the whole Lorenzo. It gave it that Italian swag. So
Right, right.
I wanted the Lorenzo. Jay Lorenzo was the name of him. And then the O for Jay Lorenzo, I put a wheelchair. And I put the wheelchair there because it's like the Grammy for the journey.
Yes.
And I wanted that wheelchair to symbolize the fact that it's not about me. It's about everybody that has been through those dark places, that have faced a disability, that have faced a challenge in their life. And when people wear that, that's what it symbolizes. You know, no matter what you've been through, no matter what walk of life you've been through, everybody that has darkness, all those people that's in silence that feel too vulnerable to tell a story, I want to tell my story. I want to live for all of us that can't or don't feel comfortable enough to come out and speak their truth, speak that, talk about that journey. And in every one of my sneakers, there's a motivational quote. And
Yes.
in one of them, there's a quote in the tongue of every pair of sneaker that says, it's different quotes in each sneaker, but one of them says, when you think about giving up, remember why you started. And I put those quotes in those sneakers because I wanted something. I wanted a pair of sneakers because it related to walking. And
Yeah.
that's something that's really important to me. And I think so many people take walking for granted because they don't realize that it can stop instantly. And I wanted, when people wake up in the morning and you're in a dark place, or you feeling depressed, or you suffering from mental health or something like that, you can have something there that gives you that motivation, that gives you that positive quote, like I had, where that quote that I lived by was, it can be worse. And I always want to leave somebody with that quote that gets them through their day, because I feel like everything that happens to you, how you respond to it is really what determines where you end up. So giving them that positive motivation in the morning is super important for me and I wanted, just to have something that, I mean, like when I'm out and I see somebody walking and they have that hoodie on, or they have those sneakers on,
Yeah.
or, they read in my book, and some of the, feedback and the reviews that I get back from the book, and people telling me, Jeff, I go do a speech at a college and I have 10 kids crying at the end of the speech telling me they wanted to commit suicide. And when I know that my story is not only changing lives, but it's saving lives, it's just, I feel compelled to keep telling it. And I want to tell it on every platform that I can tell it on. If I save one kid from playing with a gun, and, like, I struggle a lot with, legalization of guns, because I've met police officers whose kids were shot with their gun, and
Right.
their guns are more secure than any gun that most people own. And
Exactly.
I got shot with a gun that was registered. So, having a gun in your home for protection is really why most people have them. But when that gun gets in a kid's hand who's either fascinated by playing with the gun, or not understanding that when you pull the clip out of a gun, a lot of us in the city aren't educated on guns as much as people in the South, where they go hunting, people train their kids how to use guns and firearms and things like that. But, when babies are getting shot in the city with a registered firearm that ends up stolen or ends up in somebody else's hands, I just think it's so many things that I've faced, that I've seen, that I'm just totally against the gun situation.
Yeah. Man, it's it's so many questions. I mean, we have to wind down because I could have you here all night.
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and I'm actually I'm being sincere, because your story is just so impactful, man. It's so many different. I'm gonna have to have you back on for another interview, if you be as so gracious to come back on, because
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, because definitely it's a lot more questions, but I do want to ask these two final questions as we wind down, and I want you to be able to also let us know where we can support you with your website, with the book, with the clothing line, and the shoes and everything. So I want to make sure that's included as well. But two questions I always ask of everyone: what do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be my story being told over and over again, my book to be read in schools, to students years to come, even after I'm gone, because I feel like my story, it's very impactful, because it explains the power of forgiveness. It explains motivation, inspiration. It teaches people not to give up. It gives you hope. It lets, no matter how dark that space is, it's the light to get you out of that dark place. And most of all, to have my son, you know, also read it to his son, and, have him live on, you know, through my life. And the fact that I was able to even have a son,
I
and
was
all these things that I accomplished that, you know, was originally written off for me, and
yes.
I still was able to make it happen. So
Yes.
it just means so much to me. The story had to be told.
Has, and that's one thing that we didn't touch on. This man is a father. So, just in itself, like you said, things being taken away from you at 13 years old, this man is a father. This man does drive. This man does have a job. This man is an author. This man is a motivational speaker. You know what I'm saying? So it's so many things that he does when, like you said, there's a stigma of being disabled. It's so many things that he accomplishes, as he is able to, overcome what most would look at as being a tragedy, but he has found purpose in his pain. He's sharing his story, and he's trailblazing a path, for those that come and follow after him, following his footsteps, mainly his son. So I just think that's commendable, man. That's just, it's a blessing to have you on the podcast, to be able to share that story, man. So, we're in this social media era. I mean, where, kids are going through cyberbullying, kids are feeling inadequate, not just kids. I mean, adults as well, feeling inadequate when they see someone, on Instagram or some of these other platforms, and feeling like, they're inferior, and they want instant gratification. They post something and no one's liking it, or they're not getting enough likes, and then their self-worth diminishes and things of that nature. But the fact that you've been through so much, and you don't harp on what was taken away from you, more so you harp on the fact that what you still have, and
Yes.
the blessings of being able to wake up every day, the blessings of being able to impact those with your story. I mean, it just touches me, man. And I was telling you this off camera, I came across your story, or my wife came across your story, and we sat down and watched an interview that you did as a family. So 16-year-old son, 12-year-old daughter, and my wife and I, we sat down and watched that story.
Nice.
Yeah, man. And it's just a testament to you. If you put your mind to it, and you don't give up, and you go wholeheartedly, I mean, mind, body, soul, anything can be accomplished.
Absolutely.
Regardless of your circumstances. So I want to say, man, I really appreciate, everything that you're doing, and using your platform to impact others, man. That's what Generation Motivation, the podcast, is about, highlighting those such as yourself that are using their platform to affect positive change, man. So, hey, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Man. I'm at a loss of words, man. And I'm saying that sincerely, because it's just your story. It just touched me, man. Just being a parent as well. And my daughter is 12 years old. You know what I'm saying? So how would I feel as a parent if something like that happened to my daughter, or something like that happened to my son? You know what I'm saying? But
Absolutely.
to know that you're able to overcome, and not just overcome for yourself, but overcome for others, and be that spokesperson, that role model, and use your platform and never give up, man. That's just so, so honorable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's great, good that you said that about the parenting part, because a lot of people look at, well, he got shot, he's in the hospital, he's in a wheelchair, and everybody's walking in that hospital catering to you, and people don't realize all of those things that I went through. The caregiver, which is your parent, or
Yes.
that person that's closest to you, they're actually going through those things with you, because they're right beside you.
Yes.
Through the operations. They're at the door when you go in, at the door when you come out. Those long nights where they have sleepless nights, you have sleepless nights, and they sit in a chair in the hospital room with the sleepless nights. And then my mother's still having to go home with my brothers and sisters, and still be a mother to them, as well as keep working as a single parent, and like, what mental state does that leave you in, seeing your 13-year-old kid, when you're helpless. It's like somebody's drowning in front of you and you can't save your kid,
Right.
because she really don't know what to say to me. And I like, now that I do motivational speaking and I go, like, no matter who calls me, or a friend or family, someone that call me and say, my son just got shot, Jeff, would you come and talk to them? And when I get there, the first thing I explain to the parent, because initially you want to feel sorry for your kid, you want to pamper them, you want to do everything that you feel they can't do. And that's one of the mistakes that a lot of parents make in this situation, because had my mother not given me that tough love to be independent, do it yourself. I moved out my house, I was 17 years old. And my first apartment had 5 steps to get in the apartment. And I remember when my mother took me to get the apartment, and the real estate agent was like, "Oh, I didn't know your son was in a wheelchair. If I knew that, I wouldn't have showed you the apartment with the steps."
Yeah.
And my mother says, "I want the apartment." She walked up the steps with the real estate agent and said, "Jeff, come on."
Yeah.
And the real estate agent looked back like, how is he going to come up these steps?
Yeah.
I rolled up to the steps, sat on the step, pulled the chair up the steps, got back in the chair and rolled in the apartment. And I lived there for like over 10 years.
Wow.
And every morning I had to go up and down those steps. And then my mother said to me, "I did that so you would know how to do it.
Yeah.
If I constantly challenge you, I knew every morning these steps would challenge you. But if there's ever a fire in your building, you're going to be the first one out that building."
Yes.
And when I look back at all these little things that my mother put in front of me as obstacles, it's just, it's not only like I'm proud that I have the book, but ultimately I definitely would want it to be a movie, because it shines so much light on so many different aspects of parenting, forgiveness, loving each other, and within every family, there's things that people won't forgive. There's things that people don't stop speaking to each other over. And, I just think life is so short, and it's so much meaningful things you can do to help someone else's life, that it's not so much what somebody does to you, but if you felt like it was that bad, then forgive them and show them the right way.
Right. Wow, man.
And I'm really proud. Like, out of everything that happened to me, the forgiveness part is the hardest for people to swallow,
Yeah.
but I think it's the most monumental for me, because it takes faith in God. It takes, a different mindset to even wrap your head around forgiving somebody at that level of the damage that I have to live with.
Right.
But I think, people ask me all the time, "Jeff, do you want to walk again?" And I want to walk every day. But to be honest, in my heart, I can't say that I would be the person that I have become in this wheelchair. I know for a fact that I would not have touched or changed the lives of the people that I've changed and touched. So for me, it's almost like God has given me this job, has given me this purpose in life, to use my life as that motivational tool to take this sacrifice the same way Jesus took that sacrifice on that cross for us. I feel like me taking this bullet changed my life and helped me take that blessing to bless other people. So I'm really proud of just my whole life. I have no regrets,
Man, you know what? Hey, and I agree with you, man. Your life story does need to be turned into a movie. So, Tyler Perry, Oprah, Will Packer.
Absolutely.
Hey, somebody. Hey, this brother right here, man, is man. He's touching so many lives, and just the way you told the story at the beginning, the beginning, it was just like my heart was pounding, because I was right there with you. I felt like I was right there in the room. That's how
Absolutely.
eloquent and vividly you painted that picture, man. So when I wind down, I do have one final question that I always ask of everyone. With it being Generation Motivation, the podcast, and you touched on it 1,000 times over, but I guess to sum it all up, Generation Motivation, how do you feel as though you're motivating your generation and generations to come?
I feel like I motivate my generation through my story. I'm also a mentor. and I mentor kids in Harlem and New York. It's a program called Teens Against Guns and Teaching a Generation. We call the program TAG. And I go there every Thursday. And when I first went there, I tell my story periodically. I told my story there 3 or 4 times, but I meet with the kids. I talk to the kids about, not, for one, forgiveness. And I also talk to them about dispute resolution. How can we handle that similar situation that would cause you to kill somebody, would cause you to, commit violence towards another individual. And I also, because of the police shootings, the George Floyd stories, and all these other stories, we have teamed up with a few of the precincts in Manhattan and in Harlem in the inner city, just so we could be that bridge to build that uncomfortable conversation, is what I call it, because I want a kid to get in front of a police officer and say, I hate the police. And then tell them why you hate them. So now we can give you a reason to think different, and they can tell their side, and together we can form a new unity for that respect for that blue uniform. Wow. Because unfortunately, everybody's not a bad cop. And at the same time, one life taken for the wrong reason is too many lives. So I think it's super important for, instead of us hating the cops, we have to build that conversation that's uncomfortable, and let's stop, sugarcoating the conversation. Let's put things on the table the way they really are. I think you prejudice, say it. And then, maybe the cop that has never interacted with kids in the inner city, where we have hoodies and we wear our pants hanging and Timberland boots and our sneakers loose, is fashion for us. But when you don't understand it, it becomes a criminal intent for somebody else. Right. And me being a person with a disability that drives, I recently went to one of the trainings at the police department just to tap into, mental health, and, mothers calling the cops to get them to help their child, and it turns into a deadly situation. Then one time I was in one of my cars, and my wheelchair was in the trunk of the car, and I drive with a hand controlled device, and it's like a metal bar by the steering wheel. Right. So I have to hold it for the brake and the gas, and I'm holding it, and the cop jumps out in an unmarked car, pull his gun out, point the gun at me, and tell me put my hands up. When I put my hands up, the car takes off. Yeah. So he's chasing me with the gun, but being that he's not really aware that I'm in a wheelchair, because, he's like, you don't look like you're in a wheelchair. I don't really know what that looks like. But had he shot me, I already been through that trauma, but it just, it wasn't a prejudice situation. It's just more, I fit the description, things went wrong. And I just said to the officer after everything calmed down, somebody really needs to speak to your commanding officer about the training. Yeah. Because if y'all not properly trained for these situations, then how do you know? You don't know until something happens, So I just think it's a lot of work that needs to be done on both sides. The community understanding the officer's position and his role, and the officers understanding the community that they serve in. Because if you put an officer in a community that they're not familiar with, and they don't understand the culture and the people that they're serving, I don't feel like you can be the best, doing the best job that you can do.
Right. Exactly. Wow. And there was something else that you touched on about the 5 disabilities, where you would put.
So I have this other program that, I've been doing at different corporate locations and in some of the high schools, where we call it In My Shoes, with an organization called Bridges, who works with people with disabilities. And what we do is go to different schools, and we get there in the morning, we give them 5 disabilities. Somebody's blind, somebody hears voices in their head, we put headphones on them. The blind person, we have goggles where they blacked out so you can't see, and they get the cane to walk with. And we also have someone in a wheelchair, and we give them these different disabilities. And for the first half of their day, before they leave, and we give them the disability, they fill out a questionnaire, what they think about disabilities and how they feel people should treat people with disabilities. And I compare them when they come back after they actually have the disability, and they navigate the school and they find out the door to the bathroom is not wide enough for the wheelchair, and different experiences that they have that are like what I live with every day. They get to see what it's like for this person that's blind. And what was the most impactful part of that day for me was one of the kids that was blind had a gym class, and they played basketball at gym.
Yeah.
And he told me he couldn't play. And I asked him why. He said because he was blind. So when I went, the other kids that could see said, well, Jeff, he can't play because he's blind. So I went to the gym, I put him on the foul line. I took the stick and told the other kid, hit the basket, tap the basket with the stick so he could hear it.
Yeah.
And let him shoot the ball to the sound. And he made the basket. When they saw that reality is what I told them before we started. Stop saying what you can't do and tell me how can you do it. Wow. And when you think out the box and you figure those things out, not only did he get to play basketball, but now it becomes an inclusive environment.
Right.
So when we talk in diversity and inclusion, and I think all of these things that, people pay for guest speakers to come in to their organizations, people talk about better practices at work, people talk about how can we make the world more accessible, to people with disabilities. And some of these things shouldn't be something that we single out. It's like when I go to Walmart and it's a power door. The door serves everybody. It doesn't just serve me because I'm in a wheelchair. When I'm at the mall and I see that wheelchair parking space, it welcomes me to the mall. And when I go on job interviews, like I tell a lot of companies, if I can't get in your building, how can I feel welcome to work for this company?
Right.
Why should I shop in a store that I can't go down the aisles in? And then if I'm in the supermarket and, people sell products, and then if your product is, the better products are on the highest shelves, right. To me, it affects your bottom line on your revenue, because if I can't reach it, I'm not going to the front to get somebody to come get me the product off the shelf. I'm going to get something that's eye level. And it's not just for people in wheelchairs, somebody who's shorter that can't reach the item on the top. They're going to buy the items on the bottom. So now, when you even look at it from a business perspective, what can you do to make your business accessible to the world? Because it's 1.4 billion people with a disability. So if you count us out, it affects your bottom line. It affects everything about you. And there is no good business without us in the business.
Exactly. Good gracious. Hey, man. Hey, man, so many talking points, man. So many gems and jewels. Good gracious. It's like I said, and I'm sincere, man. If you would be as so gracious as to come back to do an interview, because, man, I feel like I'm not even doing it justice with everything that you have to speak on, all the topics. It's so many other layers, and that's why you, the viewer and listener, you need to purchase his book. Where can your book be purchased at?
The book is, I don't do Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. I sell the book myself because I want to meet all of the readers, because it's a motivational book.
Yeah.
And I want to be in touch with the people that's actually reading the book. So if they're in a dark place, I can actually help them and not just sell them the book. Okay. But I sell the book on my website, and they can go to my Instagram page, Shoes by J. Lorenzo.
Okay.
And from there, they can locate the website to the book.
Okay. So Shoes by J. Lorenzo on Instagram. Okay. So are you on any other platforms as well?
I'm on Facebook also, Jeffery Williams. I could actually send them all to you and you can put them up.
Yeah.
On
Yes. I definitely want to post that. And they can also find the clothing line and all that stuff through your Instagram page. Okay.
And all the websites is in the back of the book as well.
In the back of the book as well. Okay.
Yes.
Man, anything else you want to touch on?
No, that's it.
Yeah, you touched on so much. Hey, it's so many different talking. You know what? There is one thing, and this is just to lighten the mood slightly. I'm a hip hop head, and Jeff is a hip hop head, and he was telling me this story off camera. And hey, just share a segment of the two artists that you that you were able to witness battle rapping back in the day.
Back in the 80s, there was one of my friends, his name is Ade. He called me and said, Jeff, we need a location for this battle because JayZ was from Brooklyn, DMX was from Mount Vernon, and then it was a couple of rappers, Big L and a few Harlem rappers, right? And Damon Dash wanted a location. So they said, let's go somewhere that's centrally located. At the time, my brother had a game room in the Bronx called Uptown Jump Around. It was a barbershop and a game room. So my friend all day met me in the Bronx at the game room. So they had me on a pool table. So I had JayZ on my left and DMX on my right. So they had this famous battle that on Hot 97 recently, Damon Dash was talking about this battle. And, you know, all the little kids in the neighborhood that was there, you know, I'm still in touch with some of them. But it was like we witnessed a part of history. I'm really looking to run into JayZ just so I could remind him of it. I was actually trying to get them to do a documentary on this battle.
Yeah.
And because I was actually there, and a few of the people that witnessed the battle that I'm still in touch with, you know, they were actually there. So I think it would be real interesting to interview those people that was actually there, because to this day, nobody can guarantee who won that battle.
Who won that battle? Like you said, two different styles, and the flow is different. You know what I'm saying? One's rugged, one's sophisticated. One, you know what I'm saying? So, man, Jeff, hey man.
But it was an honor to meet, you know, two people that ended up being legendary rappers. You know, so it was really touching. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
That's also in the book too.
That's also in the book.
Story in the book. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey, and you go to his Instagram page, and you see you know, a lot of the celebrities that he's met. Ooh, man, hey, I don't want to run out of time, but
so what else is interesting? Last year, they called me to do Fashion Week. Yeah, Runway of Dreams, which is an organization Mindy runs, and she does a lot of adaptive clothing and stuff like that. She gave me the opportunity to be in a Fashion Week and wear Tommy Hilfiger's line in the fashion show. And I also wore the J. Lorenzo sneakers in the fashion show that, you know, people will see that on my Instagram page as well. But to be in a wheelchair, have a disability, and to be on a Fashion Week runway globally around the world, it was priceless it was life-changing for me. I mean, the way it made me feel inside when the world turns their back on you, and now 20 years later, 40 years later, I'm able to be the face of the world. It's just amazing.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
You know, who would ever think somebody in a wheelchair would be a model? Like, it just touched me in so many different ways to see people with disabilities, you know, just destroying that runway, you know. But like I always say, you give me the runway, I'll take over for you.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah. Literally. Hey, and you asked that question about who would have thought it. You would have thought it.
Absolutely.
If anybody would have thought it, it was you.
One thing I live by, everything they said I can't do, I already did.
You already did.
If it's something that I need to do, I'm ready to do
it. No doubt.
Absolutely.
I love that mentality, man. Hey, Jeff, man, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you, you know, setting aside a little bit of time to share your story. Hey, man, just keep doing what you're doing, because you are a blessing to society, man. So many people need to hear this story. I want everyone that's listening and watching, I want you to go support Jeffery Williams. I want you to purchase his book. Once again, My Feet Are Off the Ground, A Journey from Tragedy to Triumph. I'm going to list you know, all the ways you can get in contact with them and connect with them, because hey, this story needs to be heard, man. So,
and if there's anybody that has a family member, you know, with a disability, or they're in a wheelchair, or they recently had a gunshot situation, no matter where they are, I'll show up. Whatever it takes to change that person's life, I'm part of the team. So any of the parents, the caregivers, you know, if you're exhausted, you can't figure it out, just feel free to call me. We can do a Zoom. If I got to pull up in the town, I will. Whatever it takes to help that next person get through it.
My man. Hey, man, you are truly a blessing, man. And
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you, man. You are truly a blessing. Hey, and to, you know, the viewers and listeners, hey, I definitely appreciate you tuning in. to another episode of Generation Motivation, the podcast. Once again, I am going to have Jeff back on at a later date because, you know, once this episode is viewed and once we, you know, get the book and read it, I'm sure it's going to be a lot more questions asked. So I would love to, you know, be able to have some of the listeners and some of the viewers, you know, be able to pose some questions as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, you know, until next time, hey, I'm your host, JaySnipes, aka the podcaster of the people. And until next time, I'll holler.
If you like what you see, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.